It was a beautiful, early Saturday morning. I went out to check the garden, coffee in hand. The birds were singing. A couple of them came near and eyed me suspiciously, wondering if I was going to delight them by turning over some earth. It was a moment, a time to let the air fill your lungs, soak in that beauty, and feel God's peace. And then the sound of gasoline combustion. And I went inside. What if I told you that about 1/3 of the drinkable water in the United States is used to grow a crop that none of us can eat? A crop that thwarts biodiversity, that many feed with fertilizer that causes algae blooms, or cover with pesticides that many argue are dangerous to us or our pets. A crop that we seem to put anywhere there's a little space. I'm talking, of course, about grass. The lawn came into its own in Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries, and if you like old-timey movies based on the stories by the Brontes or Austen or Eliot, you see them. What you don't see is the labor and enormous cost of maintaining them, and the separation of the wealthy who strolled upon them and the poor who made part of their meager living by cutting them by hand. But with the invention of the mower in 1830 and the improvements that followed, these patches of heaven became attainable to more and more of the population until they became expected. To the point that now regulations and HOAs and old-fashioned peer pressure assure that we will each keep our patch of green to certain standards. But why? This is the last of our Why Summer Sermon Series sermons. Say that fast 3 times. And we've asked why God about a lot of things. But I think this time we need to ask why of ourselves. In thinking about this sermon, I found myself looking around. And if you look around, it's kind of shocking how much grass is out there. And not just in terms of fields to play in or golf courses, but cemeteries, around schools, municipal buildings, between highways, and of course, homes. Almost anything we build gets its plot of grass. And by the way, it's not all bad. I like having a yard, even if all I do with mine is mow it. But why so much? Why does it seem to be the answer to every spare space we create? And I think a lot of the answer is we just don't think about it. It's expected. It is what is done. And if we think about it and are honest about it, the whole thing's kind of tyrannical. We featured pictures of our little pollinator garden on Facebook this week. This gift of our own Denise Morrison and our Girl Scout troop. And I know some look at this little patch and aren't crazy about it, but it hosts a remarkable range of wildlife. Not just pollinators. We even have salamanders living out there. And where the heck did they come from? It's a tiny tribute to what happens if you let a patch of soil grow what grew here before we all bought our beloved John Deeres. And I really love mine. We are, in the end, co-creators with God. And I think there are times we forget that. We go with the flow, and we don't question. We cry out, God, why? Why is this world such a mess? And we never think about what usually is the real answer. We've taken our free will, our freedom to make our own choices, and made it that way. We and others have made the mess, and we, with God's help, need to fix it. I know talking about grass is, a little silly, but it is a reminder that God lets us as people create much of the world we live in. And remembering that's important when we talk about what's really important. We had another horrible school shooting this week, and we found ourselves bowing our heads or crying out to heaven. Can it ever stop? And of course, there were also cries that said, where was God? Why didn't God stop this? Why does God allow war? Why does God allow starvation in the Middle East? Why doesn't God step in? Why? But we have to understand. We make choices. That's our God-given gift. And we live in the world that we and others have made. With the gift of free will, God has largely given us the keys to the car. And sometimes, what people create is awful. Can God step in? I believe so. But mostly God steps in through us. We are God's hands and feet. The phrase thoughts and prayers is getting pretty tramped on right now because tragedy occurs, and some say it and it rings hollow because there's no action. And in our world, where the news cycle lasts maybe 15 seconds, there's no doubt some say it, knowing another story will grab our attention, and the tragedy, at least in the minds of most, will pass. But prayer, which can be done in a lot of different ways, really is the basis, I think, for change and for creating a world in line with the vision of God, because prayer changes us. Living a life in connection to God means remembering what God wants and acting to bring that into being. Whether it's that little patch of earth we set aside that's going to belong to nature, or a society that cares for the ill, protects its children, and lives in peace. And yeah, some of that's easy. A lot of it is not. And until the work is done, we find God sharing our grief, promising resurrection, and reminding us that one day the kingdom will come. Until then, as Mr. Rogers reminded us, we'll also see God in tragedy in those who don't run away, but who rush in to help. Until then, we will also see God by looking for the helpers. Until then, we will try to be the helpers, answering God's call. Living life in connection to God means remembering what God wants and acting to bring that into being. And some of that's easy and a lot of it is not. But no job is out of reach for us if we will work with God.